any DAP leader in Selangor who wants to get into the state committee, you have to be quite rooted to the grassroots. Many people are really asking, what happened with Gobind? Welcome back to the Are We OK podcast, the podcast that talks about politics and public policies in ways that are relevant to you. My name is Dr. OKM or Dr. Botak, and
I'm Mr. Money Peter. I noticed that many of you guys who actually watches this show did not hit the subscribe button. I think only about less than 60% of you guys are actually subscribed. And what happened is that you guys do not know that there's a new episode coming up. So do us a favor, hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification button down there, right? Because that will allow you to be updated when the latest episode is uploaded. We are also open for advertising as well. So for those of you who are interested, who actually do any form of product placement or whatnot, do welcome to contact us. Our email will be listed down below.
Peter, I think this episode is going to be quite interesting, very full of new information and also sharing, taking you behind the curtain and also our audience in many, many ways. So I don't think we'll go into much small talk. I just want to highlight one issue, which is gotten some feedback on this second 5G network issue. There have been further developments, statements issued by U Mobile and also the chairman of U Mobile. I won't respond to this, in this episode. I just wanted to wait for a bit more information, a bit more responses, including perhaps responses from the Minister for Communications, MCMC, maybe some of the backbenchers will raise up issues when the budget debate continues. Okay, we want to start off by talking about a recent development which many people have asked me to share, which is the recent DAP Selangor state elections that took place just yesterday. For those of you who don't know, DAP is one of the few parties in Malaysia that has a competitive state elections, meaning for the state committee in each state, where 15 people are chosen to be part of the state committee, and this takes place every 3 years.
Yeah. So you were saying that this means that in other parties there's no such election. Usually it's appointed, right?
Yes, correct. The state chief in PKR, the state chief in UMNO, for example, they are all appointed by the president, right? So in the DAP's case, it's not. We have state chairmen that are selected from within the 15 people who successfully get enough votes to enter into the top 15 for the state committee.
Right. So we can say that generally the state election does have a good reflection of what is the grassroots sentiment like.
Yes, within each state for the DAP, for better or for worse, this is something that when I was running for the state committee, when I was a member of parliament, it's something that I had to do in terms of going out to try to campaign. But the big news coming out from this DAP Selangor state elections is the fact that the outgoing chairman, who is also the DAP deputy chairman at the national level, and the Minister for Digital, Gobind, he failed to get into the top 15, which is quite a big sort of like message.
Yep.
Which means he is not eligible to be named as a chairman or selected as chairman. And that's why we have a new chairman, Ng Zihan, who is the former secretary for DAP Selangor and EXCO in Selangor, and also Adun for Kinrara. I just want to divide this discussion into two sections. The first section, I want to sort of like give you an overview in terms of the dynamics within DAP Selangor. And then the second part, then only we talk about Gobind himself.
All right.
So just so that you can understand and have a more full explanation. One thing that our audience may not know is the dynamics within each state for the DAP is quite different. So for example, for Perak, when they had their state election contest, right, there were only 15 candidates. 15 candidates for 15 positions.
Then it's a Pao Ying already. It's a
yes.
confirm win.
Correct.
Right. And Selangor?
Selangor, we had 50 candidates for 15 positions.
Oh, wow. In a way, if Perak 15-15, there's a bit no point of voting, right? But 50-15, then that is a real competition.
So for the 15 people in Perak, there wasn't any vote. No need to vote, what?
Yeah, no.
15,
so
that means you
right?
get in. That means they were successfully, I don't know what's the word, elected, I guess, as state committee members. And the reason this is the case is because in Perak, the leadership is very united and cohesive under Nga Koming, who's the state chairman.
Right.
There are pros and cons about this kind of situation in Perak. The good thing about that kind of situation is that under united leadership, you can actually push the agenda for the party in that state in a more coherent and also more focused way. So for example, I think under YB Ngakoming's leadership, they managed to raise enough funds to give scholarships to DAP Perak members whose kids go to university. They are, I think, raising funds for DAP Perak Huis or HQ, which Penang has successfully done.
Right.
So that there are these things that you can do, if let's say you're cohesive and you have strong leadership. Whereas in Selangor, it's much more dispersed and diverse. And there are different power centers, meaning that there's no one person or one leader in Selangor that controls all of the delegates that will be eligible to vote in the state elections.
Was there any particular reason that how it developed to this such a vast difference? While the structure is actually the same, but the development that caused it to result in it's very different. This 50.
Yep.
So is there a particular reason why it became like that?
In Perak, let's say, I use Perak as an example because it really shows the contrast. There was a faction that was sort of like in contestation with Ngakoming's faction. Right? So the second faction is quite well known among people, political commentators who know the DAP. Is led by Kulasegaran, the MP for Ipoh Barat. Basically, in terms of forming branches, Koming was much better at doing it. So he managed to grow his base and was successful in increasing the number of branches, so much so that the other side overwhelmed by numbers and they knew they couldn't win this fight. That's why they just retreated and basically let Koming side dominate the state committee.
Basically, no worthy challenger and the leader is too capable.
Yes, correct. In the case of Selangor, you don't really have a central strongman. And I think that's reflective of the diverse nature of Selangor. Right? You have, for example, a lot of branches in the Sekinchan, Sabak Benam area that are more representative of semi-urban kind of setting. Sekinchan is famous for paddy fields, tourism, right? That is sort of like one kind of grouping of branches. And then you have another grouping of branches that are maybe more urban in nature, the branches in maybe like Puchong, Subang, PJ.
Right.
And then you have another grouping that are more like in the Klang area, sort of like a different kind of background from those in PJ, right? So you have different kinds of leaders that are controlling different numbers of branches who send their delegates to vote.
So can I say that because in Selangor, generally the culture is a little bit more diverse, that's number one. Can I also take my guess is that also because generally Selangor is more well-resourced, so therefore the capable parties or power of voices have more resource to actually pitch against one another, causing this sort of like there's no real one strong man all the time.
Yes. So once you see that there are different power centers, right, there's a natural competition by these different power centers to want to set up more branches, right, to sort of like have more bargaining power to exchange votes with others. Right. So then it becomes sort of like a competition. Right. The good thing about this situation is that it's much more democratic in the sense that there's no one single person that says, I control more than 50% of branches, then I can call the shots and you have to listen to me, right? But the downside to this is that sometimes you're not really quite sure what you're fighting for, right? You're just forming branches for your own power and there may not be any sort of like stronger principles involved in terms of how you want to exchange votes.
Question, when you were saying that forming branches, it means that, let's say today if I'm one of DAP's member, right, and I'm at a certain level of leadership, I have the liberty to go and form branches as many places as I like.
You can if you have enough people resources who are following you. But to do this, you need the support of certain leaders within the party, in the state, because ultimately the formation of the branches still have to be signed off and approved by the chairman and the organizing secretary within the state.
So it's a little bit like at the moment, if I get the support from my leadership to say that I am the kind of person who's allowed to form branches, pretty much as long as I have the resource and the people, I can keep expanding. It's kind of like command and conquer I just going to conquer more places.
So in the past, let's say before 2008, DAP was in the opposition at state and federal. So not much to fight for and not that many resources to go out and form branches, and people weren't really clamoring to come and join DAP for better for worse, right? So at the time, you can say the people who did join DAP joined it because they want to have that struggle of helping the party have a voice in the opposition and things like that. But after 2008, I think things start to become a bit different. You have more resources because you are in the state government in Penang, in Selangor, and for a short time in Perak. And then after 2018, you have the potential of being in power at the federal level, right? So the resources for you and the impetus for you to go and set up more branches is also higher.
Wow.
And whatever power that you can get, right, in terms of a certain number of branches at the state level, you can also use this as a bargaining chip to exchange for votes at the CEC level, at the national level. This kind of structure also means that whatever, let's say, approach that the national leadership may have, I'll give it as a very simple example. Anthony Loke, in his opening speech at the Selangor convention yesterday, he said he wants the party in Selangor, the party leadership in Selangor, to be diverse. And he quoted this acronym, CIMB. CIMB. So he said, once a Chinese, Indian, Malay, and he said Singh lah. Singh basically is like Bengali Singh lah. I mean, that's the B lah, right? But of course, Bengali Singh is a pejorative. I can talk about the origins of that word in another episode. And he also said that our 4 MPs, DAP's 4 MPs in Selangor, Chinese, Yobiyin Puchong, Indian, Ganapati Rao Klang, Malay, Sharizan Bangi, Singh, Gobind in Damansara. So he actually made an appeal for the delegates to vote in and support all these 4. But that's the national sort of like appeal. The voters themselves, the delegates themselves, for better for worse, only voted 3 out of 4. That means Gobind didn't get in. So you can see, right, there's this kind of grassroots and different centers of power responding to different kinds of signals. Maybe just to wrap up this part, before you have any questions, Gobind is not the first incumbent state chairman to fail to get into the top 15 in Selangor. Because before this, in 2018, also I think, quite sad for him, Tony Pua, he was state chairman for 2 terms, if I'm not mistaken. And in 2018, he failed to get into the top 15.
Right.
So there is this kind of precedent, that has happened in Selangor before. I'm not sure whether it has happened in other states. I haven't been in the party long enough, but I'm sure others who know better would be able to educate me on this. But at least in the recent 10-15 years, I know of this particular case.
It's not a common occurrence.
Yeah, it's not a common occurrence, but it has happened before. And the reasons for this are quite diverse depending on the state. And we can talk about this in the second part. But before we go there, any questions you have with regards to the structure of DAP Selangor and some of the power dynamics?
Let's first start by talking about the structure so that, number one, for me to allow to have a deeper understanding and how this affects the general leadership. And number two, in terms of people, I'm going to leave it to later, whether is it Tony Pua or Gobind Pan, right? So firstly, does this mean, because if I look at DAP versus other parties then, we can see that generally the leaders that birth from this structure tend to be very strong leaders, right?
Okay.
Because unlike a normal party where you are appointed, so you will be given the position and prove yourself. But in this case, in a DAP context, while there could be some that's given and then you prove yourself and endowed with resources and so on, but there are also those fighters who literally build it from scratch up by grinding their teeth and earn a significant amount of respect, right?
And also a significant number of branches.
A significant number of branches, which is very impressive. Can I say that is one of the reasons why you will see DAP among other parties in consideration? You will also see very gritty kind of leaders.
So I will put it this way lah. I think any DAP leader in Selangor lah, I don't want to extend it to other states because I'm not so familiar. Any DAP leader in Selangor who wants to get into the state committee through elections, right? You have to be quite rooted to the grassroots. Meaning you have to, you can't just do national politics lah, especially now. You must go and mix around with them.
That's right.
You must go to the different places where all the different power centers are located, and you must show value lah.
Right, really connecting with the people and command the respect from the grassroots itself.
Correct. So I'll use myself as an example. When I got first elected as MP for Serdang in 2013, the grassroots didn't really know me, and I didn't really know the grassroots. This is in my own area lah, in Bangi, in Serdang, in Hulu Langat. But what I realized after about a year or so, right, was that I cannot just do national politics. I just issue statement, go to parliament and say X, Y, and Z. Even though that is important, even though that is what the larger public sees, I need to actually go down to the ground to get to know my branch members and leaders, to hang out with them, to go karaoke with them, to go makan with them and whatnot. Right. So and I learned this from the late Eddie Ng, the former Adun for Belakong, who really was very, very close to his to the members in Belakong and also in that area lah. So it took me a while because I'm not really that natural of a politician. I'm more of an academic, right? Which is not why I'm back in academia, right? But I learned it. There's Cantonese. There's a phrase called "ma sei lok te hang," right? So it basically means that if let's say your horse die, you have to go down on your foot lah to go work the ground, and that's what I did. So that kind of training is good. So all of the DAP leaders, most of them will be quite familiar with going down to the ground in Selangor to go to Sabak Benam, Klang, and all these different places to go and meet the grassroots leaders lah.
Yeah.
So that I'm not sure whether that constitutes being gritty leaders or not, but you definitely have to work the ground.
Yeah, so just to share with you and share with the audience as well, I came to learn this one thing was that there are times that I go to events where I meet people and they will walk up to Ken Ming or come and tell me, they say that, hey, and these normal people, right, just politically aware like myself, and they will say that I enjoyed that time when you were the MP. They will say this kind of thing. And that gave me this like, what are the odds that you go to an event where there's a guy who's not involved in politics, not even any party member, who will come up to you and say, I enjoyed the time when you were the MP for our location. It tells that there are certain things that you have done that was able to translate all the way down. Because, let's be honest, I don't even know who's my MP by now, and I barely even see shadow or feel anything that he's done for me.
Yeah, I mean that is a legitimate point. It's not easy for MPs to touch all of their voters, especially in larger constituencies like the ones in the urban areas. So yeah, it's good that we can have this kind of impact on the voters, and then in this particular context, it is really important to be in touch with the grassroots in your own party, right? And I think it is not the good thing about the DAP, at least as of now, is that it is not like the culture of other parties where you have to give incentives for people to vote for you, right? They just want to see you. They just want to know who you are. They just want to know that you're willing to go down to engage with them. Maybe have some dinners with them and things like that. And of course, the situation may change later, but I think that's one of the things that they want to see. And of course, they also want to see you voice out certain things at the national level, perform well as an exco or an MP or a minister or deputy minister, and then they will, acknowledge that and then give you support.
And I have to say that this time the ones that get voted in are the ones that generally, when I go to any events, they will come up and tell me that they feel the effects when they are the MP. Like for example, Gobind, even people like Hannah, all this, right? Like I can see on like normal ground people, not even in politics, they'll walk out and say that I do see the benefit that they've, the good things that they've done.
Yeah, and if let's say the people on the ground can feel that, you can be very sure that the members also feel as if this MP, this Adun is doing his or her job well. Right. Okay. So then, we'll come back second segment and talk about why, in this case, Gobind Singh lost. Okay. Be right back. Hey guys, welcome back to the second segment of the Are We OK podcast, where we're talking about the results of the recent DAP Selangor state elections, where a shocking result was shown where the incumbent chairman Gobind Singh Dio failed to get into the top 15, which meant that he failed to get elected into the DAP Selangor State Committee. In this second segment, I want to sort of like explain a little bit more, in terms of my own view of why this happened. So, I just want to put a few caveats there first. The first caveat is that it's very sad for any incumbent state chairman not to even get into the top 15 because, like it or not, when you're in that position of leadership, you have to sacrifice your time, your effort, your energy into taking care of the state apparatus, into trying to manage the different personalities. And, we've just established in DAP Selangor, there are different power centers, very gritty
different
personalities.
strongman.
Yes, correct. So
A woman.
yes. So Gobind has had to manage that over the past 2 terms since 2018, so 6 years. Definitely can imagine that he will be feeling quite low now and see this as something that's quite sad. But of course, if Gobind or any of his officers are watching this, we hope that this would maybe give you more time to focus on your federal responsibilities as Minister for Digital, which is very taxing. Just like a week before this DAP Selangor state elections, Gobind was in London doing work for the Ministry of Digital and doing engagements there. He's also still a member of the CEC, deputy chairman. So he has a role to play definitely at the national level, right? And so that's one caveat. The second caveat is that because I myself wasn't running for the state elections, I was the outgoing DAP treasurer for Selangor. So when you are not running as a candidate, right, what happens is that you sort of like don't pay so much attention into the goings and comings and goings of who is lobbying for what, how they are trying to win votes and win support from each other. So that's another caveat, right? So, I'm not really on the ground I wasn't involved in any of this and any plotting one way or the other.
Were you there on that day though?
Yeah, I had to be there because I had to table the financial statement.
Okay.
So those are the 2 caveats. But before I go into explaining Gobind's situation, I just want to draw some, compare and contrast. Because the same thing happened to Tony Pua in 2018, right? And I think this is something that Tony would admit himself. Tony is not the kind of leader that goes down, who really goes down to the ground to, in his words sometimes, to go and hee ha ha with you, to go and, go and karaoke with you and things like that. That's not his personality. And I think that time he also had other more important things to do. Like,
that's right.
Find out what the hell's going on with 1MDB, right? So I think, because he was doing all these things for the party, the publicity stuff and all that, he still had the support of the majority of the leaders in the DAP in Selangor and also the grassroots, over the 2 terms that he was there as state chairman. I think it was from 2012 to 2018, if I'm not mistaken. But in 2018, after we won power, he was working hard at the Ministry of Finance. Definitely didn't have so much time to go down to the ground. And one of the things that triggered, I think, this reaction against Tony, which I think was very unfair, was after Eddie passed away, July 2018, if I'm not mistaken, there was the process to select a new candidate. And this was when somehow, somewhere along the line, Tony was given a task to go and find somebody outside the party, to give a fresh kind of impetus. And during that time, he engaged or talked to a former Astro AEC presenter who was interested to be a candidate in the past, but for various reasons, declined to be a candidate in the past elections.
Right.
So she was interviewed as a potential candidate. And then somehow, somewhere along the line, her name was leaked out by a DAP leader, not Tony, somebody else. And then the grassroots in Blakong started rebelling, saying that Tony wants to go and put a Tian Ping or a parachute candidate there.
Okay.
So there was a lot of backlash and reaction against Tony unfairly because he was tasked by somebody else to find a new candidate because the existing state wasn't exciting enough. So this then became the narrative for the grassroots in Blakong to start mobilizing other people in other parts of Selangor to basically kick Tony out.
Right.
So that happened to him, and that was quite widely reported, by the press and others during that time.
Right. So, question number 1, right? We don't see all these things in news, obviously, right?
Chinese press cover a bit.
Chinese press will cover a bit. So these are all the whispers that will happen in WhatsApp groups mainly, and then leaked out here and there.
Yes, correct. And then also the journalists will go down, then they will ask this leader, that leader, and then the leaders will give their own opinions.
So most of it is kind of like the own DAP network.
Yes, correct.
Your own channel.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, the channel will have their own views, and there will be ways in which these views will go out on.
Right.
Right. So, but most of the time, the leaders within the DAP are quite careful in terms of how they express their viewpoints, lah. Right. Which is why I think many people are really asking what happened with Gobind. In the eyes of most people, Gobind is a minister that is performing.
Yes.
He's going out, engaging with different
That's
industry people.
And he has a good reputation among us, even so far away.
Correct.
Yeah, so I was very shocked when I saw the news.
Just to draw you guys behind the curtain, lah. I think one of the challenges that Gobind faced is similar to Tony, but also different. In the sense that Gobind, not really the type that will go hee ha ha with you, lah. Right? He's much more willing than Tony to go down to the grassroots to engage with them, especially when it's closer to state elections. But most of the other periods of time, right, he's focused much more on other things. When he had his law practice, obviously his law practice took precedence. And of course, he is representing a lot of DAP leaders as well, those who are in court and all that. Yes, so he's very busy, and now that he's minister, even more busy. Right, so that is the part where harder for him to engage on the grassroots part, lah. The second part, where I think maybe a bit different from Tony, lah, is that Tony had a focus in terms of what he wanted DAP to do. He wanted DAP at the time, because we're in opposition, to organize a lot of ceramahs, to organize a lot of dinners, to go out to rally the support, especially giving different leaders, including himself, the opportunity to talk about 1MDB. Right? So that was very much the focus, and he was doing a lot of publicity stuff and all that as well. Whereas for Gobind, right, that kind of focus, that kind of purpose, that kind of mission was not there. Wasn't there for 6 years, I would have to say. Because at the time I was in the state committee. Because of this, right, and especially after he went back into cabinet again, especially when he was a cabinet minister in 2018 and then later on back in cabinet in 2023, right, that kind of direction and focus was even more absent. And when this happens, right, the leaders in the state committee, the adons, the MPs, they will start to pay attention, in the sense that when they get together, they will be asking themselves, hey, where are we headed to as a party in the state, right? What are our positions in terms of how to champion certain policies at the state government level?
Right.
How do we get more of our members and leaders involved in state government activities, or even federal government activities? In Chinese, they will say, 我们的方向在哪里? What is our direction? Right. So I think that was lacking. And once the leaders see this, right, it will definitely filter down to the grassroots. Because the grassroots will be like, hey, I don't really see what our leadership is doing.
Then they ask the boss. Then the boss will be, I also don't know. Then
so if the boss says that he or she doesn't know, it's a reflection on the state committee as a whole, but more so, chairman. Because the chairman is the one who decides when we have meetings, where we have meetings. The chairman is the one who decides what we need to do in area X, Y, and Z, how we need to respond to area 1, 2, 3. If let's say, and I'm not saying that I propose this, but if let's say somebody like me went up, or state secretary or somebody else went up to Gobind and say, hey, DAP has their own HQ, PERA is raising money for their own HQ, why don't we do the same? Why don't we do a campaign to raise money for DAP Selangor HQ? Because the current one that we have is like in a terrace house and it's a bit old and things like that. If let's say I were to suggest that, right, I cannot decide on my own that I want to do this. I need buy-in from the chairman. And then the chairman will give instruction, okay, this is our direction. Over the next 3 years, we're going to raise funds to build a new HQ. But you can see, 2018, of course, we couldn't do much because of the Sheraton move and all that. But even after that, right, we came back into power in 2022. So I'm not saying that should be the direction that the party should take, but I think these kinds of initiatives, these kinds of direction and this kind of focus wasn't there. And I think this is probably the main reason why the grassroots and some leaders wanted a change.
Right. So it's kind of like, to a certain extent, it's more of like, okay, regardless of whether your reputation is good, but at the grassroots level, do you fulfill my needs in that sense, right? So there's this very underlying strong kind of thing that goes on in the Selangor kind of
a reaction. So for example, if let's say you are CEO of a company, right, and then the CEO is seen as, rightly or wrongly, basically just wanting business as usual.
Yeah, and then you're
Right.
busy with something else.
Yes,
Right, maybe
correct,
you have a sub company right now, and that's taking a toll on you. So this one you kind of like didn't really pay attention. Then people will be like, you know what? Why not you go and be the CEO there? Let us install a new CEO here.
something like that, something like that, right? So I think that was perhaps the message that was sent by these election results. There may be national implications, but we won't talk about it right now. And I think maybe moving on, under the leadership of Ng Zihan, which I think many people who are watching this podcast may not know, why was Zihan elected or selected? Who is he? I've known Zihan for a while, since I became an MP. He was actually just an Ali Majlis in MPSJ, this Subang Jaya, when I was elected in 2013. Around the same time, he was also given an opportunity to contest as Adun in Kinrara. Right, and then later on in 2018, he became Exco of local government. So he's had a steady rise, and I respect Zihan a lot. He's somebody who, his nickname is Hao Hao Xiansen, meaning he's nice to everybody. And he's the kind of person who really worked the ground. He's gone to different parts of Selangor because of his role as PBT, head of Exco in charge of local government. So he's tried to solve a lot of problems at the local level that are faced by the grassroots, people that the grassroots knows in their own areas, and that's why he got one of the highest votes. Right, he's somebody that most of the DAP leaders in Selangor respect, and also the grassroots respects as well. So he is, I think, the right person, and he was state secretary for the past 3 years. I think he's the right person to lead the party to the next phase of growth, and hopefully the rest of the team can unite under him, under whatever vision he wants to push for DAP Selangor.
Now that you say it, right, it reminds me of the time when we went to Kuala Lumpur Baru.
Yeah, KKB.
KKB, yeah.
For the by-election.
Yes, for the by-election. And I saw Ng Zihan there. I also saw Gobind there.
Yeah.
Right? And I think now that I link all these people up together, I think I get why. Because you get the same vibes from them on the ground.
Very grassroots.
Yes, very grassroots. You can see that at the moment they arrive, the people that you don't know who are they can just easily approach him and her, talk to them, and they don't behave like they are better than you, correct. They are higher rank. They just act like they're one of the guys.
And they are there, the vibes that they give, right, is that I'm here to serve you.
Yes.
That's very important.
Yes, and there's no such thing, like usually there is this thing where you will see, like if someone is believed to be in a higher position, even when you're doing your ground activities, they will be on their side doing their talks, right? They're not really involved. But you can see people like Bihin, people like Zihan, right? At the moment there's a talk, regardless of whether the talk, actually I can't really hear what they're saying also. They will be sitting there participating in it, not being out of it and then later come back, so done already.
Correct.
Yeah. So there's this thing that, I can see why the appeal is there.
Yeah, and because of, let's say you say Bihin and Zihan, I'll use them as examples. Bihin got the most number of votes, and the experience that they have gone through, right? Actually both of them were Ali Majlis. Both of them were councillors. Zihan was councillor. Bihin, I think, was helping out in the party before she became an Adun. So she was an Adun before she became an MP. So they are quite familiar with dealing with local issues.
Right.
Knowing how to listen to people to try to solve their local issues.
Right.
Whereas at the MP level, let's say for me, maybe even more so for Gobind, that kind of engagement with the local issues, not that much. Meaning you are not really going to the local council to meet with the sort of like ketua pengarah or people like that at that level, or even the working level in the local municipalities. You depend on your adun or your local councillors to do it. So then because of that, you are seen as a little bit more distant from the grassroots kind of activities and issues.
Right. So in your case, you actually, that's why you say you had to go down and learn.
I had to go down and learn. I had to go down to, and this again, I learned a lot from Eddie Ng, the late Eddie Ng. And I was forced to basically to try to understand local issues.
Were you a little bit at the start when he forced you to go down and learn all this, right? Were you a bit resistant about it? Like, hey, I got my own problem to deal with, right? Why do I need to be there? Do you have that?
So Eddie never forced me. He led by example. For me, I had some initial growing pains because sometimes I would miss some events because I was a bit too tired, and then some of the local guys complain, they let Eddie know, correct, Tian Ping and all that, parachute candidate and all that. But after about a year, I think I made the commitment, to say that I'm gonna go down, really understand the issues. And I think closer to the end of my first term, and then in the second term when we were back in opposition again, that was when I really had a much more higher comfort level in terms of knowing how to engage with the local councillors, with the local council, with the issues on the ground,
Right.
So much so that sometimes, like raining time, I'll be there visiting some of the sites that are flooding, because you are on the ground enough, right? Sometimes these things will happen spontaneously.
Right. Can I ask you, did you then because some of these people, right, I noticed that they don't really live in the location that they compete in.
Correct.
Right? Were you naturally in those locations, or did you intentionally move over that location so that you can be more effective?
So I made the commitment to the voters in Serdang in 2013 that when I got elected, I would move to the constituency.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've been living in Serdang
So
for
you
the
uproot
past.
your life for that?
I mean, it's small price to pay to me. And to me, there's a more practical reason. If I live there, I'm close to where the action is. I can drive there. Don't have to live in PJ, go down. And this is something that maybe as elected reps, as the audience, you don't understand about elected reps. When I live in the constituency, right, I feel that I have a stake in it. When it's flooding, I can see, this place is flooding.
Correct.
I can get a sense, if there's a traffic jam here, I know exactly where the traffic jam is.
Correct.
Right? So at least you feel more invested. And because of that, right, you go around. Sometimes, if you live in the constituency, you even go to some of the markets to shop and things like that.
That's right.
So you know the kind of local conditions better.
That's right. Yeah, I think one of the things that I hear a lot is that you jog with them, because you have the habit of running.
Yes,
yeah,
correct.
After
That's
you jog there, then they will meet you there
Yes.
like that.
Yeah, and I am probably the only MP who can say I was in charge of building a track for my residents.
Because you also use it.
Yes, I use
So
it.
you're invested, right?
I'm invested in it, and I was basically the sort of like the person who did the tender together with my staff for a track in Bandar Baru Bangi.
And the Borneo market.
The Borneo market, yes, I started that in Serdang as
Because
well.
you were there and you
pushed for
interacted, you
it,
knew,
yes.
so there's that. I think that is actually a very good move. I think it was probably your best investment in your political career to build your rep there.
No, and the thing, the important thing is, especially for the benefit of our audience, right? When you do this kind of things where you invest your time and effort, right, you actually learn a lot. You learn about how it is that the local council works or doesn't work. You learn about how to, do open tenders so that you can select the best contractor and then work with them to implement a construction project, so that actually I can reduce the price of that tender by X% because you are not asking for commissions and things like that, right? You're just doing it proper and doing it transparently, right? So I think if we have more leaders who are willing to embrace that kind of model, including people like, we have good examples with people like Zahan and Biin, right? Then I think with the right leadership, right organization, DAP in Selangor would be able to do much more moving ahead. And then at the same time, Gobind can continue to focus on his national duties. So to me, maybe don't see it so much as a negative, see it as a positive win-win situation. And for those people, who may want to accuse this of racial voting, DAP Selangor not wanting to support a Sikh or Punjabi to be a State Com chairman. Remember, DAP Selangor voted him and also supported him as state chairman for six years, 2 terms, right? So, and just like how the grassroots voted and replaced Tony Pua in 2018, for better, for worse, now in 2024, the grassroots and other leaders have also done a similar move for Gobind. Right, so it's not a racial thing. It's just, I think, the grassroots and certain leaders wanting to see a change in leadership.
Is there such a narrative going around that it's a racial thing?
I think some people may say it quietly. I don't think it has gone public yet, but here I want to take this opportunity to again explain to the audience here that is no issue. And I'm also quite glad that what Anthony said, 3 out of the 4 MPs got into the State Com, including my successor in Bangi, Sharizan. Right, so, of course, he's one of a number of Malays who contested in this out of the 50. He was the only one who was, he and Jamalia are the two Malay candidates who are in the state committee.
Right.
Yeah. So we have that kind of representation there.
Oh, yeah. Okay, this is really interesting to understand how it works. My personal thought after hearing what you say, I thought at first there's some, interesting stuff at the back. Maybe it's a sign of protest or whatnot. But looks like it's not. It's just a very straightforward thing. I don't think you can spend time here, so therefore, why not you focus on other things? Kind of concept.
Yes.
And my personal thought is that at a personal level, if I were to put myself in this shoe, actually a blessing in disguise, because there's too many things.
Yes.
There's the national level as a minister. There is the national level responsibility within the party.
Yes.
And then if let's say you take up some more, and then not to forget, you also have your own family.
Correct.
Yeah, and your own personal life. I think it's very bad for mental health, I would say.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. So letting go is actually it's actually good for mental health.
Yes. And also hopefully good for the party in Selangor as a whole, where different people can focus on different things. Right? So I hope you're satisfied with that explanation. If you have any questions with regards to what I've explained, or maybe even disagreements, please put it in the comment section. But please be respectful and don't use any foul language. Right, so we'll be right back after this to talk about Trump 2.0 and the implications to Malaysia. Be right back. Welcome back to the third segment of this Are We OK podcast, where we're talking about politics mostly in this episode. Now we want to shift our focus to a much more significant event, especially on the global scale.
A more significant election.
Correct.
That affects global.
Correct. This is, President Trump coming in as president for the second time. 45th president and now 47th president. So he will, be sworn in January, I think 20th of January 2025. I don't want to go into the reasons why he won, why Harris lost. I want to shift the focus, in terms of what are the likely takeaway points that Malaysian politicians and political parties will try to understand and then later on communicate, whether internally or externally, with regards to this Trump victory, what they can learn out of it. Yeah. If let's say I was this component parties within the Madani government, whether it's Pakatan or whether it's BN, one of the key takeaway points from this US elections is the fact that inflation and rises in the cost of living is something that was very real, and it is something that can potentially overcome any narratives that you have on a good economy.
Yeah,
Right?
That's right.
Because think about it, right? If let's say your economy is growing well, the kind of impact it will have, right, is maybe the rich get richer, the stock market goes up, your T10, T5, T1, they enjoy the majority of the spoils, right? And sort of like your B40, your M40 don't really feel it that much. But if let's say your prices go up by 20%, 30%, 50%, right? And your wages don't go up as much, the mass population is going to feel it much more.
That's right.
This tells me, reading this kind of tea leaves, right, the political will and the desire of this Madani government to do the petrol subsidy, I think has also gone down. Would you agree?
I would say yes, but on the other hand, right, I also saw one thing that what he did was that he painted this part, right? Everyone feel it. He played along with the sentiment that, everything's going up. Now, his policy is not sound. His theory also a bit often. But what he did is that he immediately unite everyone with a common enemy. Yeah, and this is the most classic strategy of all, to unite all people with all differences. The best way is to give them an enemy, a scarecrow, a straw man. And to a certain extent, in a way, that is a strategy that our PM has kind of adopted, which is the T15.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, and so then I think this time round, he kind of threads it quite well in that sense.
So he wants the focus to be on the T15 rather than the subsidy rationalization.
So while it is increasing, so he talks about it, but his narrative is these people are the reason. So he shift it and now I'm the savior, right? So he can paint himself the savior. Same thing as Trump, right? As much as it is unsound, but that's what he did. He did the exact same thing. He said, all this, but it's because
Biden,
Biden,
and I'm going to fix it.
Kamala, so I'm going to fix it for you. But whatever he say, right, actually it's going to make it worse.
Okay, so I'll come back to that point later when we talk about policy consistency and communications. But just remember this point about the reaction towards inflation and also the potential political effects that it can have in the landscape here in Malaysia. And this linked to the inflation story. So even though for example the US economy was doing well, unemployment was low, this somehow wasn't felt by enough of the voters lah. And I think in the case of Malaysia, even though we hear all this good news about FDI coming in, data centers being built, economic growth going very well, above average, going to be 4.5 to 5%, 5.5% next year. This year, likely to be in the high fours, maybe low fives. But if let's say this doesn't translate into higher wages and better jobs for your M40 and your B40, right? Then I think this will also be something that may not yield political dividends, and the government will pay attention to this.
Yeah, that's right. That one I do agree.
Maybe just one last point on this in terms of the overall government. They would also be cognizant of the fact that it's not just saying that you want to do this policy, you want to target the T15 and all that kind of stuff, right? But the way you design the policy, I think, and the way you communicate it, I think this is going to be very important. And I'm not sure whether this is something that the government really gets, but it's something that they should understand. Because even though, for example, Harris came out with a lot of policies that she wanted to implement if she had been successful in her bid to be president, and at the same time, under the Biden-Harris administration, they did put in policies such as the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, right? But if let's say that kind of communications isn't done well, there may not be enough policy consistency that is put together by the government, right? In terms of how you define T15, how you have a proper incentive structure and all that, right? That success is also going to be lost on the people. I think some people in government understands this.
Yep.
Whether they are able to translate that understanding into actual concrete decisions, I think that's something that we should also pay attention to. So that's the Madani government part. Individual component parties within PH, UMNO. If let's say I was a grassroots leader in UMNO, or maybe even somebody in the higher ups, right, I would look at Trump and say, hey, this guy can make a comeback, even though he had all these scandals, he was convicted and all that kind of stuff, right? Maybe Bossku can come and help us. Maybe we should make sure that we can get a pardon for Bossku so that he can come out of prison and restore our party to what it was before, including becoming PM again.
I got a feeling that you're gonna get a lot of comment down in the
on this
this episode when you say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying that that's the right approach to take.
Yeah.
I'm saying
theoretically these are the opportunities based on studying what happened to Trump.
And some people in UMNO would definitely be looking at this as a possible argument that they can put forth.
The one I do agree. I'm not saying it's a good move. I'm just saying that it may inspire people to look at that as an option.
So another takeaway point would be, let's say for DAP, I think the Democrats have always counted on the minority voters. Your African American, your black voters, your Latino voters, to basically overwhelmingly support the Democrats. Of course, black voters, the support is much higher, 80-90%, depending on gender. And then for the Latino voters, is somewhere between 50 to 60%.
That's where they miscalculated, man, this time around.
Correct. So not only was there a shift in the vote of especially the Latino community, but more importantly, across different counties, and I've seen some studies on this as well, the estimated turnout rate among the minority groups also decreased.
That's right.
Right? And this could be because, they were not satisfied with the record of Biden-Harris. They were not so inspired by Harris, all sorts of reasons, right? And if let's say some of the more forward-looking DAP leaders will look at this and say, hey, this could be a possible outcome for us. Meaning if let's say the turnout among the non-Malays decrease, some of our seats will be in danger. And probably some of PKR seats will also be in danger.
Yes.
Right? And especially if let's say UMNO is not able to work together with Pakatan, or even if they do, they're not able to attract back the Malay support.
Yeah.
Right? So, any reactions to that?
I think when it came to this, I really kind of went into it, looked a little bit more, and I was looking at their messaging and stuff like that. And what I did realize was that I think they really miscalculated. Because why? They depended on the same kind of people. For example, let's start with, say, Trump, right? Trump's message was very direct. It was just, make us great again. And that message resonated both on the grassroots level. It also resonated on the sophisticated level people, where he bring back the power into capitalist arm and The business owners all felt like, yeah, and
more tax cuts for you. I'm
that's
gonna
right.
deregulate. I'm
That's
gonna
right.
make crypto sexy again.
That's right. While at the same time, you know that if you have a little bit of knowledge, you know that actually these two is very hard to bring together. Like you can only choose one actually. However, it's very straightforward. It's very clear. It's about make America great again. But on Kamala's side, right, her problem from what I noticed was that the main thing was just diversification, which is at first there was this noise about her being diversified, but after that also she don't talk about it. She kind of went on full on focus on policies, and the way they explain it, let's be honest,
Not so clear lah.
only sophisticated people can understand lah.
Okay.
And only people woke enough can get it. Now, and then the people who stood together with her, a lot of celebrity, it was another level of up class again.
Two elites lah. Two elite.
Yes, you are pursuing the ones that are understandable for normal public people are concerns that are only T20 will have. Yeah, but put it this way, it's kind of like you go and tell a poor guy, right? Hey, you must remember about equality of male and female. The fella is like, bro, let's not talk about equality first.
I can't afford my rent.
I can't afford my rent right now. Let's talk about that first to start with, right? And they're like, yeah, don't worry. That one already developed a whole system, right? Where our policy is like that. The person's like, I don't even get you, right? To start off with. So I think that was their biggest blunder, and they weren't willing to calm down in their messaging. So I think because of that, they kind of overestimated it. They banked on the fact that they thought that message would still resound. And yes, going back to what you say, I do see that kind of playing out in DAP a little bit.
Okay.
Because among the grassroots public, I mean, just look at our comments and the general PH site itself. There is a bit of that. You should understand, you have went through it together with us.
So maybe that kind of frustration, anger, if let's say not addressed, may result in turnout, going lower.
Just maybe the people won't say I deliberately go and choose another one, but they may just be less active.
Correct.
That's all.
Yes.
Yeah, and that could kill you in an election.
Yes, correct. Yeah, especially if let's say there's more lack of transparency, in the award of the 5G contract, for example. I mean, these sort of things that appeal more to the PH supporter, right? And if let's say you are not taking care of their interests, and some people would point to the fact that Harris didn't really change her position on the situation in the Middle East, in Gaza, that made a lot of Arab Americans, especially in Michigan, very unhappy with the Democrats, and some of them did vote for the Republicans, and I'm guessing some of them also chose not to come out to vote lah.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
So let's focus now on Perikatan Nasional, right? If let's say you were Perikatan Nasional, what do you think would be your takeaway message from looking at Trump's victory?
Inspired, bro. If I'm Perikatan Nasional, I'm inspired.
Why?
Because it doesn't matter whether the policy sound or not. It doesn't matter what I say makes sense or not. Just feel the emotion. Just play the card strong.
And just whack.
Whack ani. Yeah. So if I'm Perikatan, I'll be inspired. Okay, but there's the other part where I'm not sure whether they are doing because which is very, very dangerous, right? The only play that they didn't go into is by announcing crazy stuff like tax break for bosses. Yeah, if they're willing to go to that extent to do this kind of manifesto like what Trump did, I mean, threatening, even firing certain people and so on. I mean, although I have to say that a fully declaration, I'm a crypto investor and I'm benefiting from his wins, but his stance, I don't agree that much lah. Yeah, and if I'm at the Perikatan Nasional PN side, I have to say that
very good, right? I just appeal to my base. I don't need to be moderate. I can say a lot of things that maybe sound a bit crazy or ludicrous, but as long as I stoke the fires of the base, make them angry with the current government, I may be able to use this as a pathway to electoral victory.
And throw goodies for corporates so that they will be more aligned with you. No problem, man.
I'm not sure whether PN is that kind of at that level of willingness to throw goodies for corporates by declaring lower corporate taxes and all that. I mean, that's usually not what will win you power in Malaysia. Right. But maybe some of the more populist stuff that appeals to the masses lah. So that would be, I think, one of their takeaway points lah. Maybe on the final note on this part, I think one thing that PH, and this is talking about PH specifically, some leaders may be thinking about but won't dare to say, which has parallels with what happened in the US, which is the fact that you have an issue of the age of the candidates, right? In that you have, Biden was seen as a bit too old. He was, he's 81, and if he had been successfully elected as president, he would have been 85, right? So he did not have a clear succession plan, and because he pulled out the race so late, Harris didn't have a time, to go through the primaries or to really test herself out, right?
He didn't even have the time to actually test out her election messaging and everything.
I think the parallel in Malaysia, although not quite the same, is Anwar's age. Although I think he's still very fit, he goes out and walks and does exercise. But he is, I think, 77 this year, if I'm not mistaken. And by the time the 2027 elections come, let's say they're called in 2027, right? He will be about the same age as Biden. He'll be about 80 years old, same age as Biden now, and he will be asking for another 5 years. That will take him to 85, and there's no succession plan, right? No clear succession plan, right? So this is something that I think PH leaders should think about. Not sure how many of them do, but even if they do, I don't think anyone dare to say anything because there's no clear successor from within PH, including from within PKR, who's able to continue to give that kind of confidence in terms of being able to hold PH together.
I think to a certain extent, I'm not saying that PM should relinquish his power in the next one by announcing it, but I think it's always good from a corporate end. I think it's always good that regardless of whether are you going out, in some way or another, identify certain successors that are very obvious. So that, it's just I remember last time during Mahathir's term, Anwar was personally identified as a successor already. Yeah, it was just after all the incident, then it became suddenly a culture that you don't dare to identify successor. But I think previously it was very clear-cut. Every time when PM was up, there is this clear idea that if I'm no more around, whether is it by accident, by whatever not, this person will likely be...
Of course, in the case of PKR and in Pakatan, the successor to Anwar, at least on paper, would be his deputy in PKR, none other than Rafizi Ramli. But of course, the fact that that name hasn't really been brought up, maybe in a way that I think can invite consensus among PH supporters and also leaders, shows that there is a bit of a gap there, right? Because, yes, on paper, that may be the successor within PKR. But doesn't mean that DAP, Amanah, within the context of PH can accept.
Yeah, and then the people, because you think about like Singapore one, it reminds me of like Lawrence Wong. At least 1 year ago, you ask anyone on the street, they know that if PM Lee were to leave, Lawrence Wong is going to be the next guy, right? So I think there needs to be some sort of way of planning the succession. It's not about whether you're leaving or not. It's about planning that succession. I think this is a lesson that Malaysia need to have, because yes, during that time when we see how Biden blunder in his speech, right, you have even more worry if you have no successor.
Correct.
But if he already has an appointed successor, you know that even if I vote for him, I'm voting for the party and there's someone that I can fall back on. But if he's no more there, who am I going to fall back on? It adds on to that uncertainty.
And especially if, let's say, your successor, or in this case your vice president in the US case, is not somebody that the public has a lot of confidence in, because she has not really been tested in real life difficult situations, right? Okay, so let's stop here for now for this segment, and then we'll come back in the final segment talking about some of the possible economic impact of Trump 2.0 on Malaysia and the region. Be right back.
Welcome back to the fourth segment of Are We OK? And in this segment, we're going to talk about Trump's winning and how it's going to affect Malaysia and Southeast Asia economically. Yep. Now, I want to start with this, right? 5 days ago, during the election time, right, I read an article by FMT, and the title is US Recognizes Malaysia's Sovereignty, says Envoy. This followed Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's revelation that he rejected the US Secretary of State's call to stop being friendly with Russia. No, and it was during the time of an election as well. And I just want to read this statement, right? What he said. So, Edward D. Kagan, the ambassador of Malaysia, he said that Malaysia had the right to decide how to conduct in relations, but so did the US. And his statement was, the US will take appropriate and necessary measure to ensure all US interests are protected. Now, I mean, after that, then he talked very politically correctly, lah. Like, for example, we still believe deep down, we have the core belief together, the casting, blah, 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 blah. Now, and then he ensured that even whoever president wins will remain a friendly relation with Malaysia. Now, however, when I read that, I sent it to you immediately, actually, right? And in my mind, right, I was like, whoa, that at a country level, when an ambassador makes such a statement, it is not like my friend come and talk to me. Yeah, there is a lot to unwrap, right? And Malaysia's decision to be very friendly with Russia and some of our moves lately
China
has
as well.
kind of portray a much more favorable to China kind of stance, right? And so, what are your thoughts? Because Trump is well known for making very crazy moves, lah. Let's just put it this way. Sometimes it's very uncalled for, and he'll make a mole out of a molehill and then he create a whole damn policy out of it, right?
Sure.
So, yeah, what are your thoughts about it?
Let me first respond to what the US ambassador said. And you're right, it is a loaded message. I want to preface this by saying that I'm not supporting his statement. Neither am I not supporting the message that was communicated by PMX to Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, whereby I think Anwar rightly asserted Malaysia's own independence in deciding who we want to be friendly to. Right? So, that is within our political and sovereign right, as pointed out by the US ambassador. What I would highlight here is the fact that in diplomatic relations, right, when somebody says to you in a sort of like informal but sending a strong signal or message manner, it may not necessarily be something that you want to mengheboh-hebohkan and tell others that this is what he said. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I don't think there was a sort of like a
formal...
Yes, there wasn't a formal meeting, but it was like engaging, because Blinken was there for the ASEAN summit. So from a diplomatic protocol standpoint, it may not be so wise to signal or to reveal that kind of information. Although it's good for the domestic audience because it shows that PMX is Anthony Blinken. I also dare to go and say X, Y, and Z to him, right? If let's say you're willing to reveal something about what you said to Blinken in terms of exercising our sovereign right, would you then dare to reveal something that you said to, let's say, President Xi Jinping about some of your viewpoints about the South China Sea, for example? Right? But if let's say you don't, which I don't think the PM has, then it's a bit lopsided, right? You are okay to reveal what the US Secretary of State said to you, but maybe from other, by other people, whether it's Putin, whether it's presidency, whether it's others, if you're not willing to do the same, then people like the administration in the US may interpret it in a way that's not so favorable to Malaysia.
Yeah.
That's one. Second thing is, given the fact that, exactly like what you say, President Trump is somebody who actually quite unpredictable and has no qualms about enacting these kinds of unpredictable policies. So in that kind of context, right, it may be smart for Malaysia to evaluate the situation first under the Trump presidency and maybe don't go and poke the bear.
Poke the bear. yeah.
Because in terms of priority, right, if you look at where are the priority areas in terms of, especially in terms of political, security, political and security issues, right, I would say the most important would be what's happening in Europe and Ukraine. That's probably one. 1A maybe, or 1B would be what's happening in the Middle East. Politics are not economics. And then maybe second or third would be what's happening in Northeast Asia, meaning China, Japan, Korea, and Korea, I mean South and North Korea, right? And then maybe in a distant fourth, Southeast Asia and the South China Sea. Right? So we may want to keep us in the fourth or not so prioritized area.
Yes.
Right? Because if we do move up in the rankings or the attention, right, you don't know what Trump would do or what message he would send to one of his cabinet members, or in fact some of the cabinet members, especially if let's say he appoints Robert Lighthizer as the Commerce Secretary, they may feel very empowered to say, hey, the president has given me a mandate to go after countries that may not treat us very well or has certain advantages vis-a-vis trading with us, and I'm going to hit you with X, Y, and Z tariff.
Yeah.
right? So that would not be good for the Malaysian economy.
Yeah. The first thing before we even go into that part, right, is I just don't think this is a very wise position or even revealing those things, right? Because once you reveal it, you're picking a battle.
Yes.
It's like people don't fight you, you're going to pick a battle.
Yeah.
People are just talking a personal conversation and
Yes.
you reveal it.
Yes.
It's not nice for anyone. Whether does this news actually go all the way to US side and then when became very big among them, I do not know, but I wish no. I hope not. It's quite an undermining kind of thing. It's like you're revealing a secret conversation. That's number one already. And number two, our whole economic benefit right now is because we are friendly with both nations.
Yep. China and
Yeah.
US and also others, Europeans as well and all that.
There
yeah.
is no benefit in making enemies.
Yep.
If we at the moment we are made as an enemy, we'll lose every single economic benefit that allowed us to build whatever that we built.
Especially if, let's say, under a Trump presidency, a lot more unpredictable things can happen.
Yes, I mean, let's just face it. Even China-US trade war, right? It didn't need to escalate to that point. He went and pulled the plug just outright. I mean, it could have been managed more slowly towards there, but
he escalated
he
it.
just escalated it like whatever that can happen in 3 years, he just pulled the plug. Everything happened within that.
Yeah. And he said that he's going to go after Mexico, Canada.
That's right.
Right? And sooner or later it will come to Southeast Asia, but we hope that it can be later rather than sooner lah.
Yeah. So my point is that I'm a little bit worried, and I hope that we will not go towards that. Right? Just focus on things that benefit to the people. Yeah.
Yeah, and on the politics side, I think pick our battles carefully.
Yeah. And I would say, right, I'd rather he pick fight with T15 than this one.
Okay.
Because that one at least just a little bit more still manageable.
Yeah, the T15 won't react in ways that are unpredictable.
Yeah.
Whereas
and push come to shove is, I mean, it's just that, okay, it's become
they
more
won't be happy,
unfair.
but they won't come out and do something crazy that will affect the economic well-being of the country.
This one will be there's no more T15. Forget about T, any form of T, because everyone is going to be B40.
Yes, so that's one. I think we have to calibrate our responses carefully so that we can try to anticipate what may be coming from the other side. And I think this is part and parcel of the need for greater strategic thinking on the part of the Prime Minister's office and the relevant and the important cabinet members. So that's one. A second thing is, I think in terms of more technical kind of understanding of the economic impacts, right? This is something that the policy makers, at least some of them, would be able to understand and react appropriately to the range of possibilities that will affect us differently. So I'll give you an example. After Trump was announced as the winner, the expectation that was shown by the market was that inflationary pressures would increase because the likelihood of tariffs being implemented would be higher, and these price increases would be reflected or passed on down to the consumer through higher prices. So when inflation expectations increase, right, expected interest rate also will be higher, right? And then that will translate into higher bond yields and things like that, right? The impact on Malaysia is the ringgit appreciation that we saw earlier this year may very easily be reversed.
Yep.
And we've seen some of this happening already.
Yep.
Right? Ringgit fell, to about 4.4, 4.3, 4.4. In fact, fell even more when Trump was announced as the winner. And because, for the sake of our audience, whenever the inflationary expectations lead to higher expectations for interest rates, right, then the interest rate differential between US and Malaysia will continue.
That's right.
Right? And this is something that we need to anticipate and see how to respond. Of course, on the other hand, some people are saying also that, what happens if we get rid of the Fed chair and then undermines the Fed and then tries to push interest rates down, and then suddenly the ringgit also has the opportunity to appreciate. What happens if appreciate too fast, right? Like what has happened in earlier this year? That may not also that may have certain negative consequences to the Malaysian economy as well.
That's right.
Right. So that's just one area of interest rate and the inflation expectations, interest rate and the impact on the ringgit, which will impact Malaysia's economy in different ways. That's just one aspect. There's a lot of other things that we need to project different scenarios on. If, for example, he imposes a 60% tariff on China, but not on Southeast Asia or other partner countries. If he imposes 60% on China, 10% on Southeast Asia, 20% on the rest of the world, right? So all these things needs to be calibrated, and I just hope that there are people in MITI, in Bank Negara, in other sort of like ecosystems where these things are being can be projected, so that we can have a better response to this.
Yeah. I think for one, I see Elon was his biggest supporter.
Sure.
At the moment he came up, he became president, a lot of traditional industries actually went up in prices. In fact, it was interesting that renewable energy actually went down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And his biggest supporter, Elon, is a big fan of renewable, right? Yeah. But so it also kind of tells you quite a lot, right? My personal thought is, I also mentioned in my channels as well, in my opinion, a very high chance we're going to see a slapping on tariffs on EV vehicles from China.
Sure.
Which has been a very big competition to Tesla.
Tesla, yes.
Right. And so then likely what's going to happen is that these vehicles will need to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right?
Go to Europe, but if let's say they get sanctions, then may come to Southeast Asia.
That may come to Southeast Asia. So that's one. I guess number two is you can also see that he's encouraging back Bitcoin mining. So it's going to benefit the power grid, which also indirectly benefits Tesla. But I'm more concerned in terms of the semiconductor side, because all nations have a very big agenda on semiconductor. We do not want to be branded in the list where we are too friendly at any party that we can't keep our mouth shut and leak secrets. Because I think one of the biggest benefit of Taiwan all this while was, despite the fact that they are not best friends with China, right? But because of their ability to just keep quiet, that became a huge benefit to them, where every single people will use TSMC, right? Yeah, and that is the kind of thing that will allow a lot of technology transfer and help the economy grow. And so my biggest concern is that how will this affect the semiconductor side? Because with more and more US is one of our leading data center investor in Malaysia, which makes up a huge amount of FDI. And data is the future. And there's one reason why people don't put data center in China, because data can go in, cannot come out.
Yeah, security
and stuff like that. And one of the big premise of it right now is because we are built upon that security premise, right? Yeah. And so do you see that, or what are the effects that you see in this area?
So this is where I think the narrative about wanting to be friends to all sides becomes important. Because if we can maintain that narrative, that balance, then at the very least, the US won't be able to accuse us to say that we're being more pro X, Y, and Z that are maybe not seen favorably, on the part of the US. So we'll be able to stave off those attacks, whether or not Trump and his people will buy that's a separate story, right? But I think what I'm concerned about, and I share your concerns, is, let's say FDI comes in and then we are not able to maintain that balance, then suddenly the US Commerce Secretary will start paying attention to Malaysia. Hey, these guys, a lot of data centers, a lot of new semiconductor investments, but some of this, some of these chips going to China or China-based companies that are Chinese companies that are based in Malaysia. I'm not quite sure, but let's whack them with sanctions first, and then find out later.
Yeah.
Right.
No.
So that's why I think not to say that we should shut up and not assert our sovereignty, but if we say things, we should be quite measured,
correct.
Understand the possible consequences that may hit us in a negative way in different sectors, because unpredictable Trump is in office.
That's right. Yeah, so we're not saying that we need to be like a lapdog of any country, It's just that just maintain friendship with every country. Like how Singapore does it. And Singapore has always been just, even Indonesia to a certain extent is, I'm friends with everyone. I invite everyone to come. I think that's a good move.
I think Indonesia probably a slightly better example, because in the case of Singapore, they've actually imposed sanctions on Russia after the invasion of Ukraine, which basically stops them from joining BRICS. Not to say that they had any intention of wanting to join BRICS, but one of the conditions to be able to join BRICS, right, is that you've not put in any unilateral sanctions that are not recommended by the United Nations against any BRIC country members, which Singapore did against Russia.
Right.
right? So I mean that these are some of the considerations that we need to remember, and hopefully there's different teams that are set up in different ministries that can anticipate some of these challenges.
Right. And another thing that I'm also concerned, I mean, what you mentioned just now was like, say, worst come situation, we get slapped with unreasonable sanctions, right? But on the other hand also, right, I see it as, if let's say we present ourselves as a chance of being a risk, what happens is that the higher level of supply chain will not come to us. Because putting in the data center, one of the things that you can negotiate for to help to develop a country will be to say that, okay, look, then can you set up your data science team here? Because we are here, right? So that will allow a greater skill transfer, right? But then, if let's say I am, say, Amazon, right? And I am afraid that you are being too risky, I want to de-risk myself. I will not set up my HQ for data center there.
They will maybe go to Singapore or some other Southeast Asian country.
So now you have less things to negotiate. Yeah, because people have a very valid thing to say back to you.
Question you on.
Yeah, question you on. So I feel that I do hope that our Prime Minister will faster go different country, all countries, not just Russia and China, but also every country, including Europe and so on, to pay a visit and say hi to everyone. Hello, welcome. That kind of thing.
So I mean, you made a good point, and I think Prime Ministers are doing exactly that. He, I think, just finished a working visit to Egypt recently, and then after that he travelled to Riyadh for a summit, and then after that I think he's flying off to Peru for the APEC summit, and then ending up in Brazil for the G20 summit because he was invited by President Lula. Right. So I hope that these things will result in a bit more substantive policies and agreements and engagements being put on the table between Malaysia and these countries, so that we can show that we are not just only about engaging with China, Russia, and other countries are not so important.
Right. Did he send a congratulate message or?
Oh yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
To Trump.
Quite soon after the results were declared.
It's quite normal, right? Like every country will start sending in.
It's quite normal. Yeah, Singapore has done that, and I think everyone will sort of like fall in line to make sure that they send the right signals, because they know that it's probably not good to be on the bad side of Trump.
Oh yeah, man. You don't know what happened when you go and play golf there. Suddenly he think about some funny things.
Yeah, but I mean, we'll watch this space closely, obviously. And any sort of like changes in this ecosystem that affects Malaysia would be, I think, one of the first few people to talk about it in a more analytical and also objective manner.
Yep.
Any final thoughts?
No. Just hope that with all this, we will be able to make more money economically, and hopefully that it can translate down to the right guard. So I see that for the next few years, it's very, very crucial move for Malaysia to play the cards right.
Yep, and we wish PMX and his cabinet the best wishes in terms of trying to continue to navigate this very tricky balance game.